Hello, my name is Ingrid Stölzel and I'm the composer of Livid Loneliness of Fear. The piece was commissioned by the American Wild Ensemble as part of their celebration of American women aviators, and it is scored for mezzo-soprano, flute, clarinet, violin, cello, and percussion. Having been a long-time resident of the Kansas City area and now Lawrence, Kansas, I chose to celebrate the famous aviation pioneer and Kansas native, Amelia Earhart. When I first learned that in addition to being a record-breaking aviator and outspoken advocate for women's rights, Amelia Earhart was also an amazing poet, it was clear that my composition celebrating her life and pioneering legacy would have to be a setting of one of her poems. The title of my composition, Livid Loneliness of Fear, is taken from her poem, Courage. This poem was published in 1928, the year Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean as a passenger. She then, in 1932, became the first woman to fly non-stop alone across the Atlantic Ocean, which made her an instant worldwide sensation. When I first read the poem Courage, I was immediately drawn to Earhart's powerful poetic voice and her vivid imagery. My setting is guided by this imagery as well as the strong formal aspects of the poem. I will now share Amelia Earhart's poem Courage with you and hope you then enjoy the premiere performance of Livid Loneliness of Fear by the American Wild Ensemble. Thank you so much.
and I am the Managing Director of the Mizzou New Music Initiative here at the University of Missouri. We are so happy to be able to present to you this program, American Aviatrix by the American Wild Ensemble. As many of you know, we had originally scheduled this program to be presented as a live event at the School of Music on October 18th. It was going to be fantastic. We had video projections set up on the back side of our brand new Singfield Music Center for a drive-in performance, and we had some socially distanced spots for a live audience. But unfortunately, Mother Nature got the best of us, and so we could not host that event as planned. And so I'm really excited to be able to present to you this event in a streamed audiovisual format. So we've heard two of the three pieces on our program, and for now we are going to have a live conversation between members of the ensemble and the composers whose works you are hearing tonight. If you have a question for either the composers or the ensemble, feel free to leave a question or a comment in the chat box on either the School of Music's YouTube page, the Mizzou New Music Initiative's Facebook page, or American Wild Ensemble's Facebook and YouTube pages as well. So it is my honor to introduce Emlyn Johnson, flutist and co-director of the American Wild Ensemble.
Thank you so much, Jacob. I'm going to admit our last person coming in. Great. Thank you so much for the welcome. And thank you everyone for being here to watch our event tonight. As Jacob mentioned, it's been a changing work in progress as we've all experienced during this COVID-19 year. And we are just so thrilled to be able to present this program and share it with all of you tonight. And so thankful that our whole team of composers and performers are here to have this conversation. Bravo, brava to everyone so far. And I thought we would just chat a little bit about, some of the program, some of the music, and also I know the people who are watching have some program notes. So I thought we'd ask some other questions, some other kind of bigger picture questions also. So the first question that I wanted to pose to our composers especially is, when you're writing a piece inspired by a real person, a historic person, as all three of these pieces are tonight, do you think about your process any differently than if you're writing something that's more abstract? I'd love to hear from any of you, so you can chime in.
Hi, sure, I'll go first. I think the process is different when you're thinking about a historic time and you're thinking about a person who actually lived and you're reading her words, and there's a weight and a responsibility that sometimes composers don't feel when they're just saying their own ideas. So I definitely felt like when I was looking at these suffragists, I was thinking about what were they trying to say then, and how does that message resonate with people now? And I think the weight of history is certainly on you. And then I think you make different musical decisions because of that weight.
Sure, yeah. Ingrid, I know that you're a big researcher with your pieces, so I'd love to hear your take on this too.
I do. It helps me also fill the empty page with things that when I don't have ideas yet. But yeah, I really try to get into the story. And then of course when I'm setting poetry, which I did with Amelia Earhart, then I already feel like I'm in a position, secondary position, trying to elevate what she's already done in her words. And so honoring her poem in addition to her life was really important to me. When it's pure music without words, I think the weight sometimes feels even bigger because you're trying to capture a life's essence in music, and it's tricky. But an honor. I love doing it. It's an honor, I think.
Well, Carolina, I'd love to hear from you too, but since we're talking about Amelia Earhart for a moment, I kind of wanted to share a funny little thing with our audience tonight, which is that I have been waiting for a piece inspired by Amelia Earhart since I was about 6 years old. And recently I was reminded of a little book that I wrote in the first grade about Amelia Earhart. So I just wanted to share an image from this book because I have just been hoping for this piece for my whole life. Can you all see my screen here? Great. So I just wanted to share. Thank you so much, Ingrid. I've been waiting for this for, 30 years.
Awesome. Maybe we could get t-shirts made. And we have an Amelia here.
We do have an Amelia here from one generation to another. So
yeah, so a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons why she is named Amelia is because of this project. So she's got her tambourine, she's ready to play.
Yay, I love it.
oh, I love that. That's wonderful. Well, thanks so much for sharing. I wonder if you want to add anything, Carolina, about writing, inspired by a real person,
Yeah.
how you think about that.
I think we talked a little bit about that in the interview. So what I would like to add is that it felt weird first, but kind of nice to me to be called to compose a piece as a Missouri composer, about a Missouri woman. It kind of made me feel part of Missouri. It was like, in a good way, like in a deeper way than what I actually feel like, right? I'm like, obviously I'm from another country and I've lived in the States for 12 years, but like in different states and places. So sometimes it's hard to find that sense of like being a local. And honestly, when it was like called to be this like Missouri composer writing about another Missouri woman, it really made me feel something nice, some kind of like belonging that I liked. And then as I did my research on this composer, that you give me the chance to choose, and I chose, then I find a lot of other things in common, right? Because we are like so many different things. Like every one of us is like not just one thing, but like a million of different things. We belong to different cultures, and like, I think like just by making the effort that I think we all did as composers and at the ensemble as well, we can find those connections that go beyond
Definitely.
like race and like profession, and like, we can find a lot of other ways of like connecting, of belonging together. So
Thank you so much, Carolina. We've had some really great conversations with all the composers along the way with this project, and that collaborative aspect and having those conversations is just so important and rewarding. So thank you all for being part of this. I wanted to ask Anne-Marie a question about the vocals in the pieces that you've been involved in, because again, I imagine it's maybe a little bit different when you're singing words that were spoken by a person, especially in Caroline Mallonee's first piece from this speech, than maybe it is when you're singing poetry or something, I don't know, that wasn't a direct source like that.
Although, it's funny because, yes, I mean, as we were saying, there's such a great responsibility when it's been a living, breathing person and you're really, speaking their words. And I have to say, having been up in Rochester and having been around the Elizabeth Cady Stanton, archive, all of her things and all of her memorabilia, and hearing all the stories, it's always surprises me. I think of these women as being unflappable and strong and only like they're entirely driven, but as you read the text and to hear their doubts, to hear their vulnerabilities, and we see that in all of them, and it just, if someone said, okay, march down the street like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, I would be like, yes, here I go. But then when I look at the words, you see like the more full picture of humanity, where they're not just their accomplishments, but they're also their doubts, they're also their fears. And, it just makes being able to have the words and the music makes her a fuller woman to me, as it also did for Amelia Earhart. So it's a great responsibility, but it's also a thrill, and it makes me feel like there's a little piece of her that I get to carry inside of me, which makes me really proud. So it's just a tremendous honor. And poetry is wonderful, but I look at these words that these women said, and I wish I were that poetic. Like, to me, that is, every thought they had, it just was like, oh, that's poetry. It's just really a joy.
Well, thank you so much for being part of this. It's been a joy to work with you and all our performers. So I'd love to hear, yes, definitely, brava. I'd love to hear from some of our performers who are on here tonight, Dan, Sarah, and Megan. I know Bill is around somewhere also with mini Amelia. But I'd love to hear from you, maybe anything that strikes you about your experience of working with this music, working with these composers? Any favorite moments or any thoughts you'd like to share?
I would just like to share one thing. We started this sort of program back in 2018 with a concert of Caroline Mallonee's piece at the Women's Rights National Historical Park. And it has been very satisfying and very meaningful to me to be able to bring this whole program to life with all of you. Back in 2018, we had a plan that we were going to commission more pieces inspired by just really amazing American women to lead up to the 2020 centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. And it's been very challenging to get this program together with all of the delays that we had. And it would have been great to share it on a tour, but it's just very heartwarming to me and very happy for me to be able to have worked with all of you on this and to finally be able to share it with everybody. So thank you. I'm glad we got it in 2020.
Yeah, I agree with everything Dan said. I think for me, two of the most memorable parts of this was getting to meet new musicians and new composers who I hadn't worked with before. And I also love that this was all people from the Midwest or just states surrounding Missouri. And that was really heartwarming for me because I've collaborated with people in Missouri before quite a bit, but not quite to this extent. And so it was really nice to meet new people. And I also really appreciate the narrative behind the whole project and the meaning behind the entire project. Women's rights, women aviators, and just that I've always felt that the program just had a very strong purpose. And it's really easy to commit something, like Dan said, it was difficult to get this program off the ground.
Thank you, Megan. You were working hard behind the scenes with Jacob and David, so thank you.
Of course. But I mean, what are the chances that our concert tour would be canceled due to a pandemic, that our rescheduled, completely reformatted concert would be canceled due to weather, and that we have a completely different format for this third try? So like I said, it's like third time's a charm. But because there's such purpose behind the program, I think that was really easy for me to commit to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have anything to add? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I agree with Megan. I think it's really exciting that we got to perform and work with people in the area. And like, I would never have known all these great musicians are in the area without you organizing this. So I think that's really awesome. And on a personal note, it was really exciting because Dan and I played in it was my first quartet experience ever when I was 12. And
mine too.
Were we 12 or something like that? So it's just, I mean, we played since then, through high school, and then we didn't play together until this very project. And so it just felt really, heartwarming, I guess is the right word, that we both came from here, this area, and then we went away to study, and then now we're performing together again. And I just think that was one of the more special parts of the project for me. And I just really want to say how much I appreciate how you guys took what we really wanted to do with performing all those different concerts in the different areas and the difficulties of the pandemic, but we still made a really amazing product, So I think it's just like, it's really great. And I feel very proud of us and very, very thankful to you guys for making this happen.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think I kind of have maybe a question to start wrapping us up before we get into our final piece, maybe for our composers again, or anyone who wants to share. If someone could come away with something from your piece this evening, what would you want them to come away with? That's kind of a big question. If it's
Thank you, Amblin. I don't know if anybody has an idea.
I guess I'm always going for some kind of emotion. I'm not going to dictate what it is, but I want some reaction. And I just, as we're wrapping up, and I have all the performers, I just want to say I was really moved by your premiere performance. And yeah, I was there for the recording, and I think right after the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys just really get this piece. And it's a thrill when that happens. When you show up as a composer and it already sounds so good, I can just be out of the way. So thank you so much. And I guess I'm just hoping it translated, and the audience that listens to it, and also after tonight, that you're feeling something, whatever that is. But that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the most important thing is, I guess, to try to feel some kind of connection, because that's been the hardest thing since we went all online. Musicians,
Sure.
particularly, we've lost so much in our lives of connection with other human beings, performances, audience, the connection with the audience. And this online format, it's very different in that sense. So as soon as we can all make the effort to keep connecting, regardless of the mediums, I think we're gonna get through this at some point eventually, in one way or another. So why not just say, try to make the best out of this. So yeah, I also hope for connection, as Ingrid said, of any kind. That I think that's what we're all like starving of. So
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for connecting here, even in this virtual space. It's so just lovely to see all your faces again. And it's been such a thrill to play with you all, to work with you all. And thank you so much to Mid-America Arts Alliance for supporting the commissions and this project. We are so grateful to them for their flexibility and patience. And thank you especially to everyone at Mizzou. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, David. Thank you, the whole crew over there who has just really made this possible. So we are looking forward now to sharing our final piece on the program.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. Again, thank you to the composers for the terrific music we're hearing tonight, and to the incredible American Wild Ensemble. And before we get to our last piece, I just want to give an extra special thank you to our Director of Audiovisual Services here at Mizzou, David Myers. He has moved mountains in order to get this project off the ground, and he has worked many, many, many hours with all of us to put together everything that you're seeing and hearing tonight. So I hope everybody that's tuning in tonight is giving him a round of applause from wherever you're sitting, because he certainly deserves it. And so now I'd like to introduce Carolina Heredia, and she's going to introduce the final piece on the program, Il n'y aura pas de regret.
Thanks, everybody. We have had many conversations over the course of this project, and I'm curious to hear first how you came to think about Bessie Coleman as an inspiration for your piece.
Yeah, well, I think all of that process that you're saying was very important at the very beginning when you contacted me, because that's how this collaboration started. We talked about like your project, and that was going to be based on the anniversary of the 19th Amendment. It was a little complicated. It was a complicated relationship with like the main idea for the project, the 19th Amendment. And those are the conversations that we had at the beginning that I thought they were very, very important to like place ourselves in the right place for just engaging with this person's life, which is what was part of the research later on. So when we're like looking at Bessie Coleman and saying like, wait, okay, but she is a Black person, and we're talking about the 19th Amendment that did not include Black people, especially Black women. And so how are we like fitting this inside the project? So, I thought that like this kind of issues, when you're engaging with historical stories, situations, there's always this kind of conflict, how we're looking at that from our perspective today.
Yeah.
So what we decided to do is we're gonna see this as we are honoring persons that were capable of thinking and acting and conducting their life in the search of the good for something that it's bigger than themselves, right?
Really
inspiring. And exactly. So we could have focused on the limitations, but we decided to say that this is what we're looking for. We're looking for like this kind of persons. We want to we want to learn about them, and we want to talk about them, and we want other people to see how one can like go beyond our own individual goals in life or aspirations, and like really like do something that can like leave a legacy like this woman that we ended choosing have done it.
We had talked about different ways in which we might incorporate some of Bessie Coleman's quotes, or, we had a lot of discussions about this. And I know you ended up with kind of an interesting compromise of some of her words and then your own words. So I'm interested if you could tell us a little bit more about how you created the poetry that accompanies this.
Yes, so the poem that I created, it's based on a part of a quote by Bessie Coleman that I thought that described her personality. And again, this piece was about like honoring her life. In the poem, Il n'y aura pas de regret is a French version of There shall be no regrets, which comes from a quote by her that in its entirety is, if I can create the minimum of my plans and desires, there shall be no regrets. Which I found it to be really expressive of the kind of personality that somebody, that kind of like tribe that somebody needs to have.
Yes.
In order to like do all of the amazing things that she was capable of doing, going to France twice to make sure to get her license, and then her acrobatic flying licenses, and then having the life that she had. She also died young. Yeah. By reading this quote, you can tell, she probably didn't have any regrets, because she did create so many. She did accomplish so many of her plans and desires. So that's the core of the poem. And then the poem, it's a mixture, right? It's a mixture of that and things from my own life that can also be, I guess, like condensed into that kind of phrase, that kind of like way of like living, or at least like trying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am really looking forward to sharing our recording, and thank you so much for chatting, Carolina.
Of course. I can't wait to watch it now with everybody else. And thank you so much for this chat. It was fun.
I fell down in a swoon of indulgence in your coerced kindness, your groomed sinlessness, the redolent flesh, potion beauty. unbelievable vast of emptiness. I am weightless now, insubstantial. I have been forgotten. I've forgotten them. I've relinquished. I've surrendered. I've forgiven the other and myself. I'm weightless now. Il n'y aura pas de regret.